Okay, here we are again talking about my Infernal Shade Necro build. And this is the third video in the series. This will be the last one, I think. But I have now been to Corruption 1000, and I've had more experience with the boss fights and the dungeons, and have picked up just some new information and tips that I wanted to share with you, especially covering one of the weakest points of the throwing shade build. So because I already have two videos that go into a lot of depth, I'm going to go faster in this one. I'm just going to give you a quick summary. Then we will of how the build works. I'll load up a bunch of demos of the build in action so you can see it. And then at the tail end of the video, we'll still do some in-depth analysis, just focusing on key points and especially the updated gearing priorities for this build. So yeah, this is something, trying a new format. Let me know what you think, and hopefully you like it, because I think there's a lot here. It's a really deep, cool system that all the skills work together, but there's also still room for customization and further exploration. Like I'm still learning new things even after all these hours playing this build. So just as a refresher, the key skill is Infernal Shade, which is our damage skill. You put it on, it's a damage over time skill, so it ignores any enemy armor if they have it, or which I don't think they do, but it also ignores crit avoidance, dodge ratings, things like that. You just lock it in and then they die, basically. It doesn't do that much damage by itself, but we use Sacrifice with the Flickering Shadows node to start stacking massive multipliers on top of Infernal Shade. And then we use Dread Shade to keep our flickering flames burning, basically. And what really drove this updated build are changes to Dread Shade. So this was very important. I already was taking it, but Martyrdom gives us armor per vitality. That gives us some survivability. And then Beyond Death Beyond Death gives us new zombies, and Final Grasp casts Sacrifice. Both of these are free. You do not pay the mana cost for them. So this ties in our Sacrifice and zombies into the kind of cycle with Infernal Shade. And zombies, because we're making them for free from Infernal Shade, they make sense to specialize. They are basically little bags of minions. Through Vile Force and Shepherd of Thralls, you get 3 new minions every time a zombie dies, and they also help keep us healed up with the Necromantic Fervor, and Giant Zombie amplifies that. And then skeletons are along just for an initial minion source and giving us 3 per cast, and they also refill our mana when they die. So this allows us to pretty freely cast all of these skills. Don't directly cast zombie, they cost a lot of mana, but other than that, skeletons keep us topped off. And then since we don't actually use zombies on the skill bar, we have room for transplant to teleport around. So that is the build at a very high level, and let's get into some demos. Okay, and I'm here at Corruption level 975. Just wanted to show you my last kill of the Corpse Emperor before Corruption 1000, not 10,000. Still have garbage gear. It's not all garbage, but let's just say, oh, suboptimal. For boss fights, sometimes if I'm not going to take a lot of damage, I will swap in a Confluence of Fate. Okay, let's go kill him. Make sure skeletons don't engage, do one sacrifice, and then make sure that the repop doesn't kill anything, any of our shades. Swarm shades at the beginning, and then we can just keep on shading. Oh, he's running away now. He's sad. And he's dead. That was it. That was the last kill. I've never seen LP on this shield, but that's fine. Just no relics. I got some LP1 relics, but they were all worse than this Twisted Heart. Okay. And then let's go over to do my last shade before this is going to take me to 1000 corruption. Shades are a little annoying because you have to time their... You don't want to go off too early. You need to wait for them to spawn in. So yeah, I wait until my minions attack them. And there we go. That was the end of 3-digit corruption. And the beginning of 4. Sure, I don't think I have 2 of those that are legendary. Okay, let's just do a quick echo. So with echoes, I don't really like to take ones that increase damage. That's the only thing I really look to avoid. I'll do one of them, and I guess once you've done one, adding more isn't the worst thing because they then stack additively. But if I can avoid it, it just makes life a lot easier to go do these. These low-hanging fruits. Let's switch my amulet back. And so if I'm in an easy corruption, I don't have any extra damage modifiers. I'm just gonna walk around. I'm gonna make sure I have some dread shades up. I'll tag people. If I'm low on health, there I'll hit my sacrifice just to trigger the increased damage bonus and get my health back. But mostly I'm just gonna walk around. Not in any rush. Ooh, a staff of silliness. Every time I see stillness, I think it's silliness. That's what my brain says. Literally every single time since I've been playing this game for the last month or whatever. Oh, if I was in a harder, if I had like a damage modifier on this echo, I might be a bit more cautious. Like summoning my minions up ahead of me, or probing the area up ahead with my Infernal shade. If you ever get in trouble, always just summon your minions and do a quick Infernal shade, and then make sure, or Dread shade, get your defenses up, and then make sure you have your Infernal shade up so that you can be gaining health back, since that's the core of your defenses. And it's always, you can always just safely hold down your Dread shade, just keep casting it, because it's going to take care of itself, vamping your damage, and it keeps your defenses healthy, and it triggers your Twisted Heart. So yeah, just spam that shade. Alright, and that was a 3-in-1. So I'm going to go do some of the dungeon bosses and add those clips in here. And here we are at the end of the Soulfire Bastion. to kill the Fire Lich. Got my comfy gear on with a staff. Just going to do a kind of a standard baseline kill here. Generate a few more guys. That's it. Okay. There's a comfy kill. Okay, here we are at the end of Titan's Rest, Tier 4. Just going to do this boss to have full comfy gear on. Don't use a Ghost Maker on this boss because they do summon extra minions. So, yeah, it doesn't... if you're really fast, it might work, but it's just not worth it in my opinion. So yeah, we get both of these at once. Great. And we sit around for a while. It helps a lot to do the comfy build here just because there's not a lot of... there's intermittent things that you can leech from. So it's kind of annoying. You're just sitting there waiting. And then sometimes you get stunned when he does this big smash. So it's nice to have some static healing guaranteed. And when we go in, we can only set up 5 shades. So that's what we'll do. We survived the big hit. Whoa, why are they just not attacking? That was really weird. These zombies were just not attacking. Okay, well that's stupid. But he still dies and we have enough survivability to just sit here and take it. So, that is Titan's Heart. One way to do it. Okay, and here we are at T4 Julra. Still doing a mostly comfy thing, but experimenting a bit with Necromantic Fervor. So, we'll see how this goes. Okay, that was fine. Didn't have to move, so that's always nice. Alright, we're going to try Boss Killer up next. Okay, and here we are for T4 Julra again, but this time with our Boss Killer equipment, which just means a Ghost Maker for the more damage against rare enemies and bosses, a Rot Mind for the extra flat damage. Oh, and +1 to poison spells. I should probably spend that point. And then Confluence of Fate for the flat spell damage bonuses. And we'll take another 8% damage. I'm just going to summon my Wraiths, put up my Dread Shades, put Infernal Shade, and then go to town. Alright, here we go. And that was T4 Julra. I don't know exactly how fast she died, but I don't know if she got her little time explosion off or not. But fast enough. Alright. Okay, I just wanted to do a real quick video showing arena strategies too. Clearly I don't play the normal arena very much at all, but it comes up, I do like the endless mode, and it comes up in monoliths, of course. So it's a pretty simple strategy, but it works well. So the first thing I do is I make my way over to a corner. I go to a bottom corner because of the game's perspective, it just gives me more visibility. And then I just kind of turret up and stay down here, spam out my Infernal Shade, and then keep up Dread Shade wherever I can. And then just let people come to me. And some things you can consider for arena specifically. I really want Lingering Flames to work well in arena to set up traps for people. I've tried it and it's pretty inconsistent, but it seems cool to make choke points and keep your flames guarding them. So maybe with a more dedicated individual might find some use there. And Brimstone is interesting too, just because you have these big waves of enemies coming at you, so keeping them all slowed is nice. I'm also interested in Army of Nightmares for the arena. I just think that the crazy crowd control from it is potentially beneficial. So, okay, that's my arena overview. Okay, I just wanted to do a quick training dummy test. Basically normal gear, just using a Confluence of Fate for extra spell damage. Hey, cool. Got some 25 mils. That's what I was hoping for. That's about the best that I've seen before the training dummy dies. Cool. Well, that's the end of the dummy. Literally, it's broken now. On to better things. Okay, I just wanted to show one more level 1000, corruption level 1000 Echo, and this time with the comfy gear on, just to show that it is viable for echoes. And I'm going to do something a little silly, and I just wanted to show you putting 4 points in Effigy of Combustion, and this lets us get to just about 1 button comfiness. So when we start out, we have no minions, gotta create some. Could change skills, but that's annoying. Turn your aura off and make a little revenant. then put your aura back on. And the general rule is, as long as you have a volatile zombie, all you have to cast is Dreadshade. If you don't have a volatile zombie, you could still just cast Dreadshade and wait, but if you don't want to wait, then you could detonate them early, sacrifice them early. But otherwise they're just going to die and put Infernal shade on, then come back and put Infernal shade on, and sacrifice each other, and it's just one big circle of life. Yeah, so I think I've done maybe one sacrifice when I hit a stall. Like this. But I could just wait. But I'm impatient, so I don't. We've got a lot of survivability, a lot of ward generation. The only thing this one button technique does not work for is if you want to fight bosses. I mean, if you want to fight bosses, it will still work, but it'll be a lot slower. And you do have to be careful with your mana. You don't want to move around a lot. You want to take advantage of that mountain's endurance. Don't stand in the flames. See what I mean? Like it's obviously much slower than not doing this. But it's kind of fun, and there might be some applications for it. And but yeah, and you can just take off effigy of combustion and play normal too. But okay, that's the last thing I wanted to show you. Okay, now with the demos done, I am going to get into the weeds on skills, passives, and gears. So feel free to skip this part if you want, but if you want to learn some things, then stick around. So one of the biggest weaknesses, let's start with that. One of the biggest problems with the Throwing Shade build is that we rely on Twisted Heart for ward generation. And what that means is that we're constantly losing life, but we always want to be at full life to maximize the amount of ward that we're gaining. It also means that we don't really have a great stable state. If we're casting a bunch, our ward generation is going to go down, and you know, we're capping out not much better than just what we started at for total health. So that's not great. It's okay, but it's not great. It does lead to moments of weakness where we can get killed by just large hits that hit us when we're down. And you know, I was really relying on lifesteal to fill my health up in the first videos, and that has problems because we do so much damage that everything dies, and then we have these in-between states where we're not refilling health. So there's a couple of things that can work around this. The most simple thing is our zombies. They have this necromantic fervor, which gives us health when they die, and giant zombie doubles their health. So we can invest in volatile zombies and help them to keep us topped off. But then that's dependent on, you know, we're not always sacrificing zombies. We have to first put a Dread Shade up, and then they have to die, and then we can get our zombie. So you can accelerate this, but it's not actually even that much health that we're getting. So yeah, interesting. Does Revenant heal us faster? Okay, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. So looking at, so what I did was I went to Aura of Decay, because Aura of Decay has this 4-pointer for Absence of Life that heals you based on your missing health. And 8% is not very much, and it requires us to be at low health to get a lot of healing, but this is affected by healing effectiveness. So is this, but which really means that healing effectiveness becomes a kind of a priority. It's a prefix, so it doesn't compete with a lot of things. It's mostly on jewelry, where we didn't really have prefixes that we were super interested in. And that's going to end up turning us into healers. Very interesting. I don't know why I was healing so much without Necromantic Fervor. I mean, without Aura of Decay. Okay, this is more like what I would expect. Anyway, okay, I will stop getting distracted. But as you can see, it keeps us topped off. And actually, if we were to get to 1150 total increased healing, that is enough for Aura of Decay to permanently heal us. And this is a bit more impressive with more healing. That's a big chunk of life that we're getting back every time. And I'm nowhere near 1150 yet, so there's a lot of room for this to grow. Okay, so that's the high level of what I'm calling the comfy build. So let's talk about individual skills. Not much changed for recommendations on Infernal Shade. I think that it's worth just maxing these 2 damage multipliers first. Always keep your Shifting Doom up. It's good to have more shades, and then we focus on the area. If you want, you can try Blaze Shade and Fleeting Shade if you want a more bursty random chance thing, but I don't really like that playstyle. You can also take 2 points out of Heart of Fire to get the radius bigger. It doesn't seem to really affect the jump distance very much, so like it still is a reasonable jumping distance for reattaching, even with 4 points in here. But if that were to change, then I would take 2 points out of Heart of Fire. You can also allocate into Brimstone and get a guaranteed slow. It's really nice actually, but it's taking damage away, so it's kind of what feels better to you. Then also, if we look at Aura of Decay, the other thing that we're doing with the Aura is getting slow and chill chance, and we are, multiply this by 24%. So it's if they're in the Aura, they're probably getting slowed and chilled. So having it on Infernal Shade is less appealing. For Aura of Decay, other nodes that might be worth considering. So if you max these 4 out, you have 2 points left over. Aura of Decay by itself already reduces poison damage by 50%. So this basically means that you don't need to worry about poison resistance at all. Because so by default, 0 resistances, the 75% penetrations applied to you, you're taking 75% increased damage. Aura of Decay activated, you're now taking, 87.5% poison damage, because it's being cut in half by Aura of Decay. So just with Aura of Decay active, you're already taking less damage than you would with maxed out poison resist. So with those last 2 points, there's not a lot of things that we really care about. You could do Putrid Bomb because it applies a hit, I believe. So if you have like Frailty on hit, it's another hit option for you. Same thing goes for Poison Bolt and I believe Poison Nova at all as well. But those are farther in the tree. So I really see the 2 points coming down to do I want to go over to Poison Soul? Do I want, moving Route Weaver a bit and taking a point out of Route Weaver and getting Poison Soul? Or do I want to focus on defenses? And because all we're really applying is chill and slow, I didn't really feel it was worth going to Poison Soul, especially for the mana drain. So instead I go into Respite because our 2 defensive choices are Respite and Inoculation. And the 30%, assuming we don't have any poison resists, 30% into Respite is going to give us better overall damage reduction than a 10% damage reducer in Inoculation. So this could be as much as, what, a third of the damage, poison damage. So anyway, I'm not going to do math off the top of my head anymore. So that's how we do Poison or Decay. More points aren't really necessary. For Dreadshade, so there's 4 key nodes. I went over this in the intro too, but Beyond Death, Infernal Dread for refreshing the shades, Beyond Death for creating the zombies, Martyrdom for giving us armor, and Final Grasp then casts Sacrifice when Dreadshade dies. And because these are manaless casts, they are incredible. It means that we really don't care about casting these spells manually, and it's just amazing. I love it so much. Dreadshade is necrotic, so it helps trigger our Twisted Heart. Getting to all. And then we need Symbiotic Apparition to make sure that we get our own Martyrdom bonus. And so Martyrdom's really going to define how we build our equipment because it's making Vitality now give us 10 hit points and 25 armor when we're in the aura. The decaying faster is actually kind of a good thing because we want our minions to die so that they cast Sacrifice and summon new volatile zombies. So it's 20 points to get all of these, and that if you have a bonus to skills, which is not hard to get on your chest piece, you usually have like two extra points to spend. Things to consider are topping off a 4th point in Grim Fate, because this makes them die even faster, and it also makes the area bigger, and also grants damage bonuses. And also Flesh Harvest is worth considering as well, because this is multiplying the bonuses that we're getting. So as our minions decay. So at the max, we have a lot of Dreadshades out there. There's usually somebody who's low on health. So this is actually doubling potentially with 3 points. It doubles the Martyrdom bonus. So that's insane. If you look at me right now, I have almost 80 Vitality. So I'm getting 1875 armor, base armor, when Martyrdom is active. If that's doubled, you could easily get up to 4,000 armor off of Martyrdom if you got this to a 3-pointer. But also, we have these damage bonuses, plus the flat damage from Dreadshade that are being multiplied, and this cast speed bonus. So this would go up to a 32% cast speed increase. So basically, if I had 3 more, I have a +2 right now. I put my first point here, then 1 here. If I had 3 more points, I would finish out Flesh Harvest and then Dying Coven. No need to put more mana in. Additional Sacrifice casts, I've tried it and I just don't really see a huge difference. So I wouldn't put more points here. This is a very good skill. We don't really need more points in it because we're always refreshing our Mark for Death, our Dreadshade, and that's keeping everybody marked for death. For the zombie, again, the key thing is Vile Force and Shepherd of Thralls. Once we have those, we have a few points to play with. I like Leap Attack because it gets the zombies into the fight faster. Again, if you want health regen, Giant Zombie plus Necromantic Fervor. Alternatively, you can go up here and get Army of Nightmares. 3-second Fear is crazy. It's so good. This affects everybody. You can only fear people once, but even bosses, T4 Julra, Emperor of Corpses, 3 seconds of fear is great. Plus, it interrupts their skills. So you can see this. This is what was fearing the Emperor in my 1000 Corruption demo. It's a great skill. For 2 points, you can also go into Repulsive Vomit. This might sound kind of counterintuitive because it keeps our zombies alive longer, but what's nice is that it gives you a little bit of a window to put Dreadshade on them and just keep the chains going with zombies and Dreadshade. So it spaces them out more, which is going to lower your DPS potential, but it's more consistent and gives you more reaction time, especially with Leap Attack, getting them into the battle quickly. It's I think it's useful. Do not combine Army of Nightmares and Repulsive Vomit, because when enemies are feared, your zombies will be jumping and trying to vomit on them, and then jumping and trying to vomit on them. It doesn't work. I mean, not very well, at least. So that's my only advice, is skip those two. If you are using Poison or Decay, then and eventually your healing effectiveness is going to get to the point where this doesn't matter anymore. So you could move a point into Vital Ward and turn that healing into Ward, or you could just unspec from the Necromantic Fervor, max out your Leap Attack. You could even put a point into Grand Sacrifice if you wanted, get another Sacrifice trigger potentially, or go over, get a kill threshold, something like that. So just some options to grow into. And then for Sacrifice, we need Flickering Shadows. We want it to chain to people, so we maximize the chain casting. We really want 3 points here for the mana efficiency, but also for this 18% damage buff. That's a multiplier, and the duration and the damage over time scale. So it's nice it makes things a lot more simple to have 3 points here. I've tried, so these 3 directions all increase the mana cost of Sacrifice, which does not matter if we are casting it for free here, but you do, I think, still pay the mana cost for Blood Spectre. So it's just, Blood Spectre would be interesting to have extra minions popping up, but you really want to balance this with the mana cost. So I played around with it a bit, and I just found that it didn't give me, it was too much of a liability, honestly, to have the mana drain. If you just want to keep Summon Skeleton specialized instead of Aura of Decay, I shifted things a little bit. The key point is getting the 15 mana back and summoning 2 per cast instead of just 1. Then maximizing the mana reduction efficiency and making them immortal, giving them a 40% chance to come back. In my original videos, I talked about going over to Shambling Steel and increasing the number of skeletons. I think this one's definitely worth taking because we're there anyway, but it does, just with how many sacrifices we're casting with Dreadshade and how they chain, it really becomes less important to make everybody melee and get them all grouped up. You really don't need to. Like, everything's going to get sacrificed. There's going to be huge explosions because these guys are going to create 3 new minions every time they die. You just don't really need to get into all warriors. And sometimes it's nice to have the archers because they'll sit they'll stay back and be closer to you, and that makes it easier to keep Dreadshade up. So yeah, so just max this whole tree basically right here, and then if you skip out on Shambling Steel, you can max out Soul Catcher, which just gives you another little bit of ward generation. Memory Catcher is okay, but this is not a multiplier, so I wouldn't invest in it. And for passives, the big changes and recommendations are, so Bone Aura is actually worth, just because we're going to have so much multipliers to armor. It's dwarfed by Martyrdom, but it's nice to have a bonus when we're outside of Martyrdom, which does happen sometimes, so this just makes things a bit more stable. And Revenants are there if you don't have skeletons to summon, or even if you do. It's just a nice way to get a free minion to start things off without needing to have skeletons on your skill bar. In Necromancer, not Master, key points are anything with vitality, adding more health to ourselves. If you are using skeletons and relying on the zombies to heal, then putting points in here is good. So Life Drinker is a great emergency button. Usually your minions will have a lot of health, and this will top you up with 1 potion every time. If you aren't doing Aura of Decay, having 5 points in Effigies is really nice, because you'll often have a lot of ward but be at low health, and so having Effigies heal you to full is just kind of a nice bonus, basically. Oops, sorry. And yes, 20% cast speed, take it. Otherwise, there's not that much. Everything else down in this bottom half of the tree affects our minions, and we don't really need to invest in that too heavily. Life Leech, always a good choice, but not as necessary, especially because when Life Leech kicks in, it's usually because we've ramped up our damage with Sacrifice a lot. So at that point, having any amount of Life Leech is going to help us a lot. So it's just not super necessary to fully invest in. But if you're looking for other things, ways to increase your defenses, then it's a solid choice. Otherwise, we do Int and Vitality. If you can play around with things, you could put 5 points into Mental Cacophony for the extra ward retention. But with our Intelligence, it's less than 10% increased ward retention, and I'd rather have extra armor outside of the Dreadshade personally, since that'll be a universal boon. So looking at gear, so the core, you don't need any uniques to play this build. You can get into this with just rares and exalteds. I'm still using a rare staff. These are all comfy. I mean, this is amazing, but it's not necessary. It's necessary for high corruption, but not to just get into the game, play into the build. If you want to do the comfy build and go over to Aura of Decay, so we don't have a mana refiller anymore, and you really need Lich's Envy to get your mana costs down of your Infernal Shade and Dread Shade, and then Foot of the Mountain to get these Mountain's Endurance to further lower our mana cost. See, we start at 6, and then now Infernal Shade is free, and Dread Shade's 4 mana. Especially since Twisted Heart really wants us to be a casting speed build, then we're going to be spamming Dread Shade to trigger our ward generation. we want this mana cost to be as low as possible if we don't have skeletons to rely on. If you do, then these don't matter as much. That said, Foot of the Mountain is incredible. One thing I learned is that I undervalued strength in my stat priorities. I would put Vitality first to get the extra health, which increases our because health increases conversion rate with Twisted Heart, and Vitality is increasing our armor as well. But after that, strength is actually really important because we get armor percentages without, and potentially in unusual places. So when I see this Foot of the Mountain, I'm seeing 11 Vitality, 11 Strength, and 11 Intelligence. So that's even more ward retention. If you can get it's not that, it's kind of a mid-level item, so find it with LP2 or something, and get even another Strength and Vitality or Intelligence or percent health or percent armor. All great stats. I'd say those would be the top 5, yeah, for me. And then movement speed if you want it. It depends on how. That's kind of a personal thing about how much you want move speed. Otherwise, transplant is always important, even with move speed, I think. So it's a balance. Whatever feels best to you. Hopefully you will not get a 1 intelligence legendary Foot of the Mountain. But do prioritize the actual all attributes roll on Foot of the Mountain. Don't, because, you know, a +6 with 2 LP might end up being worse than just a +11 or +12. For jewelry, so I would prioritize healing effectiveness no matter what, whether or not you're using Aura of Decay, because it's still your only way of getting health outside of Life Leech. For amulets, cast speed or bone amulets for resists. For rings, coral rings, of course, for vitality. Otherwise, movement speed is good, or opal rings for the +2 to all stats. If you can get that, also good. After healing effectiveness, look for fire penetration on the amulet. Then look for health, and then anything to help your resists. You can also get frailty chance up here, which is another defensive layer, which can help. On the rings, you need some critical strike avoidance on one of the rings at least, and then look for health, and then I would probably go for strength or intelligence on the last prefix slot, because if you get an 8 strength ring, that's 32% increased armor. That's almost as good as what you're getting on your helm and chest armor. So yeah, and there aren't a lot of other important prefixes. You know, you could take elemental damage over time, or at least elemental damage. I can't remember which one is on rings. But I would rather take the percent armor, because I really want to get, someday I want to get to 85% armor with Dreadshade. I'm not there yet. I think I'm at 80, 81. I can just look. Oh no, this isn't a level 100 area. On your belt, go for double health, triple health if you conceal something. On the suffixes, so the increased health is more important than flat health, because we're getting so much vitality that we really want to multiply those with an increased health bonus. On the prefixes, you can do elemental damage over time, and you can also do minion health. This is a nice slot for minion health, because it's not really competing with any primary stats, so that will increase your healing from your zombies if you have it. And if you don't, then more damage, I suppose. Chest armor, getting +2 Dreadshade is really good, because as you can see, we can use those points. Otherwise, for both helm and armor, we want vitality, increased health, increased armor. and then if you can seal something, that's great. For the other slot, I've increased minion health right now, other prefix on my helm, but I'd probably rather take strength or intelligence. For weapons, so I went over to staves. Most important thing is getting a high elemental damage over time roll, and then cast speed, and then either chills or slow on hit, which neither is that important, especially if you have Aura of Decay, but it doesn't hurt anything. So mostly focus on damage and getting something with a sealed damage and then adding damage or cast speed is very good, and it's also worth it to re-roll because your increased elemental damage. Because I still have 80% unreached. It has a huge range on that elemental damage over time. Infernal Shade has a 200% spell damage multiplier, so getting a good spell damage is very important. Temple staves are amazing, mana regen, and then it's the highest spell damage you can get that also has minus mana cost, I believe, which is again very important if you're going the comfy build. Alternatively, you can go with a Dragonhorn wand. Same idea, maximize that elemental damage over time. And as you can see, this is only tier 6, and it has as much elemental damage over time as my Shade Staff. And then look at cast speed and the chills as usual. So this is what, 53. Looking at how much base damage, the staff has less than 50% increased damage over this particular wand because I got a pretty good roll here. It has lower cast speed, but you know, when we're at 84%, when we start casting minion skills and Dread Shade, we're still at 140%. So, and there's also this limiting factor of, because Twisted Horn is giving us this conversion of life to ward, and eventually you're getting rapidly diminishing returns. If you can't heal fast enough, then you cannot maximize your cast speed for Twisted Heart. So it's okay to have a lower cast speed. And then having a shield, any shield is fine. Ideally, you get one with extra armor or extra resistances. But then you get another slot with healing effectiveness. Normally, it's just on the jewelry. And you have options for all resistances. You have flat armor, percent armor. There's a lot of good stuff on shields. So, for other uniques to think about, if you really want to chase high endgame legendary potential, if you could find a refuge with legendary potential, then this is a 10% damage layer, so that's amazing. I guess you really only need LP2 and get cast speed and elemental damage over time. Good luck. Titan's Heart, again, another 15% damage reduction layer. That's great, but just be careful what you're giving up. You really need legendary potential here. For amulets, you can go Bleeding Heart and get the extra life leech, or you could do an Omnis or something. I'm just probably going to stick with Exalted for now. Similarly, Ashes of Mortality is a great ring because of that cast speed and ward retention, but be careful what you're giving up, because if you have a ring with some intelligence on it, then it's really just the fire resistance and fire damage that's helping you out here. And you could shift things around to do more igniting, but there's some potential here, but it's not essential. If you get a red ring, that would be incredible. Go for it. I'm jealous of you. It fits amazingly well in this build because of the plus to all stats and the damage reduction, obviously. For boss killing, we can, if you are fighting a boss that does not have additional minions, use a Ghost Maker, pair it with a Rot Mind, and look for the extra spell damage, and look for extra damage on the legendary potentials. Similarly, whether or not, either way, you can use a Confluence of Fate, because usually with a boss you are getting enough life leech that you don't need to have maxed out healing effectiveness, so it's okay to give things up for damage. Confluence of Fate is a great flat spell damage addition, and I got pretty lucky and got a Fire Penetration legendary on mine. Otherwise, same priorities. Look for extra health. Actually, look for extra damage, because this is your boss killing thing. Ideally, you're going to kill your bosses in a few seconds. You don't really need survivability as much. So this is your boss killing trio. Other things to think about. This is an amazing caster belt, but because of that cast speed and increased armor, this is a low cast speed roll. Nice for starting out if you don't have any gear. And in other builds it's amazing, but for ours, we're already getting a lot of armor, and the increased armor is nice, but we still need to think about our health as well. So the belt is really nice. These belts are really nice for, the belt slot is nice for increasing our health, and we're also missing out on damage over time and minion health. So it's okay. I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong, but I think that I like having the extra health more. Ferobor's Persistence, another great caster ring. Huge amount of intelligence, potentially up to 18. That's crazy. And also 180 armor. All very crazy. Ward retention, great. But if you have 5 vitality or 6 vitality on a coral ring, you're actually getting more armor out of this as long as you have Dreadshade up. And the intelligence is great, but you're missing out on the health and the healing effectiveness. So it just doesn't quite fit with our needs. But it's still a great ring and an easy thing to put in until you have better rares and exalteds for those slots. Yeah, I guess that's gear. So once you have your gear set, idols are super simple. Just look for vitality. It's such a good stat for us and there aren't any good Necromancer specifics that really help us. Maybe less damage over time taken. That's about it. So vitality, and then fix your resistances and get more health. So some builds can kind of ignore, some classes can kind of ignore resistances. Necromancer doesn't have a lot of defensive layers. So, I mean, not in the way that like Primalist does for taking reduced damage and stuff like that. Instead, Necromancer has armor, which we just want to get all in on, and then we have to fall back to our resists. Mine are still not perfect, as you can see, but I'm just kind of getting into this re-gearing for the comfy build. Resistances aren't, maxing out your resistances because of the way the penetration works isn't critical, but you still want, I mean, going from a 60% cold to a 75, that's still a 15% reduction in damage, and I would be jumping all over a 10% or a 15% layer of less damage, so it doesn't hurt to max them out. I mean, it can. Don't sacrifice too much to max them out, but do keep them in mind and always be striving for that maximum resist for Necromancer in particular. For armor, I just wanted to emphasize how good armor is. So going to 57 from 57 to 81%, that's nice. You might think, oh, that's 30% more damage reduction. That's not how you should be thinking about armor. So you should be thinking about the change in how much damage you're taking. So if we're going from taking 43% to 19%, we've more than doubled our effective hit points. Even going from 80% to 85%, you're going from taking 20% damage to 15% damage. The 20% is taking 33% more damage than the 15%. It's like I guess it's like adding a 25% layer, but the point is that those last few percentages look small for armor, but they're very good. And even for non-physical damage, you can still be, doubling your effective hit points or adding a 50% reduction layer by using Dreadshade. So it's very good, and it's what we have for Necromancers. For blessings, there's not a lot to say. You want this increased armor, of course. Shredding fire resistance is great because we're all fire. Critical strike avoidance, you need it. I mean, you don't need it, but this probably generates enough ward that you don't need full critical strike avoidance, but invest in it still. Nothing really great in ending the storm, so I just grabbed lightning resistance, and then spell damage leech for sure to help us stay topped up. And yeah, that's gear. The way I use if you've seen my other videos, I use my loot filters, 1 rule per equipment slot, and then just putting in those stat priorities that I just talked about. Sometimes I'll do special rules, like I really didn't have any coral rings. I was just like, show me all the coral rings you have, because I wanted to get a new one with healing effectiveness that I could craft onto it. And then I'll update crafting shards with things that I'm low on and hide most other things. I will put a base loot filter as a starting point for you in the chat, and I'll put links to the 3 general ways to build this. We'll do one with no uniques, one with a comfy build with some uniques, and a boss killer. I'll put all those build links into the description. Okay, I just realized I did not talk about the skill bar in the overall guide section, and so I wanted to just point out some things about the skill bar. We don't have sacrifice on the skill bar. We could. You could trade out skeletons. If you don't have skeletons on the skill bar, then you need your Revenant to get started, to start your chain. And if you ever sacrifice all of your minions, you'll be sad and you'll have to start over. So having skeletons on the skill bar is very nice because while your minions are out fighting people, you can do a quick summon and Dreadshade just to get your Dreadshade up. Also, because Dreadshade is sacrificing for us, we don't really need sacrifice on the skill bar. It's nice to have it as I want to do damage right now, but it's not necessary. You also can activate Aura of Decay and then swap it out. I don't like to do this though because I'm not sure if it's a bug right now, and I don't really want to exploit any bugs for this build. I don't want to be reliant on them. So I just make the choice, and it does depend on what you're doing. If you're more worried about clearing time, put sacrifice on. If you're more worried about survivability, put summon skeleton on. And don't trade out transplant. It's just walking sucks, so you want to teleport whenever you can. Especially, even defensively, you want to teleport. So, okay, that is the skill bar, and I will move on now. Yeah, and so this is the end of the Throwing Shade series. I might still play with it. It's fun, and I'm pretty sure that with a maxed Aura of Decay, I could get up to 2,000 corruption or more. We have the damage, and this gives us the survivability. So, otherwise, it's my go-to for farming or just having fun. And there's, like I said, there's still more to explore. So, try it out. Let me know what you learn. If you have questions or want to see anything in particular, let me know. I'm always happy to throw up another video or guide or anything like that. So thank you so much for listening and watching, for what you did, and yeah, have fun playing. It's a great game. Take care.